Hello and welcome to Good or Bad. So it's here again, Christmas. And because it's Christmas, I have to crack out the Christmas films. And what, I ask, is Christmassier than Bruce Willis in a vest fighting Alan Rickman? Well, nothing. It's practically the definition of Christmas. Or maybe I'm just misinterpreting it. Well, whatever. It's Die Hard. This movie was directed by John McTiernan and released in 1988. And yes, it absolutely is a Christmas movie. I mean, look, we have Christmas trees, decorations, Christmas songs, and an Alan Rickman saying ho ho ho.
Ho, ho, ho.
It's just instead of all that mushy, squishy, ooh, it's Christmas whimsy stuff, we have guns, explosions, and yippee ki yays, which I think isn't a bad alternative. So with that said, let's get this review started. So this movie kicks off with John McClane, played by Bruce Willis, arriving at Los Angeles, and after landing he discovers the secret to overcoming jet lag.
After you get where you're going, take off your shoes and your socks. Then you walk around on the rug barefoot and make fists with your toes.
Fists with your toes.
Seriously, how many of us have tried that after seeing this movie? John discovers that he has had a limo sent to pick him up. The driver of said limo is Argyle, played by Devorah White.
You got any Christmas music?
This is Christmas music.
See, we have Christmas music. John is on his way to Nakatomi Plaza, a high-rise building where his wife Holly works, who is played by Bonnie Bedelia. They have been having relationship problems and they want to see if they can't work out a truce to bring John home to the kids for Christmas. John explains all of this to Argyle on the drive over. Basically, Argyle is nosy and this movie needed some exposition. When they get to Nakatomi Plaza, Argyle says that if he strikes out up there, he'll get him to a hotel. You see, the movie needs to keep Argyle in the garage of the building so that when the bad guys show up, he can become an essential part of the plot. You'll see? John encounters some revolutionary new technology.
Cute toy.
Yeah, you have to take a leak. It'll even help you find your zipper.
I've got that app! It gets messy sometimes. John isn't happy when he sees that his wife is using her maiden name. But anyway, he goes up to find her at the Christmas party. And when he gets there, they exchange greetings, but soon enough they're arguing. Then Holly is summoned to give a speech, but John stays back. Which means it's time. The bad guys arrive. The bad guys infiltrate various positions in the building, cut the phone lines and head upstairs. John hears gunfire and makes a run for the stairway. Hans Gruber, played brilliantly by Alan Rickman. Seriously, some people say Snape is Rickman's best role, but for me it will always be Hans Gruber. Anyway, he is searching for Mr. Takagi, and after a bit of intimidation and showing off his intel, he steps forward. After complimenting his suit, Hans proceeds to interrogate Mr. Takagi for the code to the computer which controls the vault. He explains that the code is one of several safeguards and he can only unlock one of them, yet still refuses to tell him the code.
The code, please.
It's useless to you. There are 7 safeguards on our vault, and the code key is only one of them. You'll never get it open.
Then there's no reason not to tell it to us.
I'm telling you, you're just gonna have to kill me.
Okay.
Well, that was a very short-lived character, and yet his role in the movie is remembered by all as the guy that got shot. Pointlessly. Gotta say though, the blood effects were terrific. John McClane was watching them, and when Mr. Takagi got shot, he scrambled on out of there. But they heard him and investigated the noise. Upon finding nothing, they chalked it up to the ghost of Mr. Takagi? Hans sets his guy on breaking the codes to the vault. Meanwhile, John devises a cunning plan. Setting off the fire alarms to make the authorities investigate. Actually, no, wait, that's a good plan. I guess I'm just used to mocking the decisions made in the movies I watch. But sadly, the bad guys disable the alarm and report a false activation. Oh well. It was a good plan while it lasted. And now generic bad guy number 7, or is that number 8? Ah yes, no moustache and blonde hair. Could be 22. Well anyway, he was sent to the source of the alarm and ends up having a bit of a fight until dumb luck gives McClane the victory. John is feeling a bit festive, so he does this.
Please remember, we have left nothing to chance.
Jesus Christ, McClane! You kill him, then dress him up and put him on display? They might be trying to steal money, but you are a sadist! It turns out the bad guy John killed is Carl's brother, so he isn't too happy when he hears the news. John goes to the roof with the radio he took off the cops and calls for help, but the cops he speaks to aren't all too helpful.
This is a reserve channel. If this is an emergency call, dial 911 on your telephone.
Just send the police now!
But John gets interrupted and has to run for his life.
See if there's a black and white that can do a drive-by.
Oh, better than nothing, I guess. They have a bit of a shootout on the roof. Saying that doesn't really give it justice, because it's a well-shot shootout. See what I did there? Well-shot shootout. Shot shoot. Yeah, I know, I hate myself. John retreats into the elevator shaft and starts climbing down. They report back to Hans and he orders them to just lock him in and leave him, because it's all sealed off and he would be trapped. But the revenge-driven Carl decides to ignore his orders and pursue, which naturally leads to John escaping the elevator shaft and having access to the rest of the building. As he is climbing through a ventilation shaft, Carl almost finds him, but then he is called away at the last second. The cop that they sent to investigate the radio call from Nakatomi Plaza has finally arrived. Sergeant Al Powell, played by Reginald Vell Johnson, goes in for a look around. Meanwhile, a couple of bad guys run in on McClane as he is trying to get Powell's attention.
You are done! No more table!
Couldn't he have just shot him from the other side of the room and not on the table where he couldn't see John pointing his gun at him? He was on drugs. Powell hasn't found anything suspicious, so he starts to leave, but John can't let him go, so he throws one of the dead bodies out of the window.
Welcome to the party, pal!
I think he got his attention. John gives Hans a call over the radio and starts taunting him. As he does that, he goes through the bag one of the bad guys had and finds some C4. Well, that ought to stir things up a little. After John finishes taunting Hans, he starts talking to LA's finest, or more specifically Powell. He gives off the impression he is a cop and knows what he is doing, and relays all of the info he has gathered on these evil bad guys. The news teams are on site too, and Argyle, still hidden away in the garage, hears all about the hostage situation. But never mind about him, his extremely important part in the movie isn't until later. The LAPD are ready to breach the building, but the bad guys are equally ready to repel them, after one of them gets a snack. Bad guys need to eat too.
Alright, listen up, guys. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring except the four assholes coming in the rear.
See, this movie is so Christmassy they are adapting Christmas carols. They start shooting out the lights, but the SWAT leader insists they can do it without lights.
Jesus. Fucking California.
Get him back! Almost in! Send in the car. Send in the car.
Did he just say?
Send in the car.
My God, the cur!
The police have themselves an RV.
No, it's called the cur. The bad guys ready their missiles in retaliation. No, not the cur. John isn't too happy with what they are doing to the LAPD, so he succumbs to the Christmas spirit and sends them a gift. A C4 explosive kind of gift.
Geronimo, motherfucker!
The police deputy isn't happy with what McClane just did.
Now, we do not want your help. Is that clear? We don't want your help. I've got 100 people down here, and they're covered with glass.
Glass? Who gives a shit about glass?
I'd like to see McClane maintain that attitude towards glass later in the movie. Harry Ellis, played by Hart Bochner, is tired of listening to how much of a pain in the arse McClane is being for the bad guys, so he decides to take matters into his own hands. Ellis says he can hand McClane over to Hans, just to end things faster I guess, so Hans radios McClane and puts Ellis on. He tells him that Hans knows John and he are old friends, which they aren't, but whatever, he is a compulsive liar. He also says that Hans will kill him unless John gives Hans the detonators back. But it ends with Ellis getting a bullet in the head. Well, that little idea of Ellis only achieved his death. But whatever, he was on drugs. Hans orders the LAPD to release various imprisoned people around the world, only to buy them more time and keep the local authorities busy. And now, the FBI arrives.
I'm Agent Johnson. This is Special Agent Johnson.
Oh, how you doing?
No relation.
There's always a Johnson, isn't there? The deputy gives them a briefing and then the Johnsons, no relation, take charge of the situation. But anyway, Hans decides to take a trip up to the roof. He stashes his gun and finds McClane, But of course McClane never really got a good look at what Hans looks like, so he puts on a British accent and pretends to be a man called Bill Clay. McClane reveals himself to be a cop from New York. He says he was invited to the Christmas party by mistake and he gives him his real name and a gun.
Oops. No bullets. You think I'm fucking stupid, huh?
Okay, so he didn't give him a loaded gun, but he did give him his real name, which granted isn't that dangerous considering his wife's called Gennaro, so you can't really make the connection. Therefore, it's weird. I started to criticise something, but ended up justifying the movie's decision instead. I don't really know where to go from here. Ah, I know. Why not shoot Hans when he had the chance? He has no reason to let him live. He had a few seconds in which just to open fire before running. But anyway, Carl runs in and they have another shootout. But Hans tells him to shoot the glass because he noticed that McClane has no shoes on. Bet he gives a shit about glass now. They throw a flashbang down which gives McClane enough cover to escape. Didn't really think that through, did they? Okay, they got the detonators back, but without the flashbang couldn't they have just, shot him to death? Maybe they just love having him around. While John patches himself up, he chats with Sergeant Powell, who tells him about his tragic mistake. One night he was out, it was dark, and saw someone with what looked to be a gun. So he shot him. But it turned out to be a kid with a toy gun, and now he can't bring himself to draw his gun on anyone. And when they are talking about that, you can really feel the undertone of emotion between them. Not much is said, but not much was needed to be said. But enough of that. The bad guys have gotten to the final seal on the vault, which is a time lock that will unlock upon a power failure, and the FBI is nice enough to cut the power for them.
You ask for miracles, dear. I give you the FBI.
It's Christmas for Hans Gruber. Okay, I think that music should be played over all Alan Rickman scenes. When Gruber calls the FBI, they say that his comrades have been arranged to be released and they are sending the helicopters. John goes up to the roof to check something out and finds explosives. You just can't trust criminals anymore.
Pal, listen to me, it's a double cross, the whole roof of the building fired!
Ah, well, that's probably a bit inconvenient for McClane. Okay, so they kick the shit out of each other, but then Hans notices something. The TV. It seems that a douchey reporter has found out where the McClanes live, and has gone over there and blackmailed his way in with the babysitter, and is now interviewing the children. Hans recognises the kids from a photo in Holly's office, then flips up the face-down photo of the entire family together, which Holly pushed face down at the start of the movie upon being annoyed with John. Relationship troubles. It prolongs the bad guys finding out you're a high-value hostage. So now that he knows Holly is John's wife, he sends the rest to the roof but keeps her for added security. Meanwhile, John is getting kicked around and shot, until eventually he manages to get the upper hand and leaves him hanging.
Keep this thing on the deck! They're expecting transports, not gunships!
You really can't trust the government these days. John heads up to the roof to get the people back down into the building before it blows. As well as that, he finds out Hans has his wife. They are not moving fast enough, so to get them moving, he starts firing.
Get the fuck down!
Well, that did the trick. It also made him look like a terrorist, so now they're shooting at him. Well, you take the rough with the smooth. John grabs a fire hose and pulls a move that is probably the most awesome escape from a deadly situation on a high-rise building ever. Alright, it's almost time for the final showdown. But first, some Christmas tape. And let us not forget, Argyle's big moment is finally here. He spots the code cracker preparing their getaway, so he does this. Bravo, bravo. I knew there was a reason the movie kept you down there the entire time, and it didn't disappoint. It was such an essential part of the movie. Well played. John McClane knocks out one of the terrorists and confronts Hans Gruber.
What was it you said to me before? Yippee Ki Yay Motherfucker.
Defeated with Christmas tape. Well, and a gun. I suppose that helped too. But wait! Hans has caught onto Holly's watch and is pulling her down with him. While John fumbles around trying to undo it, he is getting ready to shoot at him, but in the nick of time he frees Holly. And they walk out of the building and John finally comes face to face with Powell. Some guys just don't know when to die, do they? Powell saves the day and Argyle bursts out of the building in a smashed-up limo. The douchey reporter gets a smack in the face and they ride off. And let it snow.
Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
So that was Die Hard. Wasn't it awesome? It knew exactly what it was. It wasn't trying to do anything more than be a fun, badass film for Christmas, and that's exactly what you get. I know the joke that Die Hard is the ultimate man's Christmas movie has been made countless times. But my question is it really a joke? I mean, it takes place on Christmas Eve, it has plenty of references to Christmas, and it played Let It Snow during the end credits. It's a Christmas movie through and through. But there's something else about this movie that pushes it beyond just a few Christmas aesthetics. It's actually got a satirical view on Christmas, and granted it works far better now than it did back in 1988, but I think it still worked then as well. It's all about money despite appearances making it look like it's not. Just think about this for a moment. Everybody says Christmas is about love, companionships, relationships, friendships, and many other kinds of ships. But the shopping, the gift giving, the climbing over each other to get that new toy, it's largely about the money despite everyone saying it has nothing to do with it. And in Die Hard, the villains are saying it's all about politics, and they're doing their best to convince everyone when all they really want is the money. Okay, yeah, sure, it's probably unintentional, but in a way it's a great satire of the modern-ish day perception of Christmas. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Christmas is just about the money, because it's not. It is about all those other things I mentioned before, at its very core it definitely is, but you can't deny for a lot of people it is largely about the money, which is kinda sad, but there you go. But anyway, my point is that I like to think this movie was picking up on that at the time, even though it probably wasn't. Okay, moving on. The acting was great. I loved Alan Rickman, as I mentioned earlier. Bruce Willis was great as the action hero that sometimes came off as a bit of a sadist. And my god, Hart Bochner is just amazing as a sleazy slimeball negotiator. In fact, he plays that kind of person in one of my other all-time favourite movies, but we'll get to that another day. The action was great, the gunshot wounds were superb, they have a lot of visual impact to them. The plot was pretty standard, but written well, especially the double cross between Hans and the FBI. The characters were written well, and I really did like Holly McClane / Gennaro. And the whole movie had a brilliant sense of confinement and pressure. And you really can see how hard all of this is on McClane, especially towards the end where he looks so beat up, but he keeps on pushing forward. Oh, and Carl, he looks so menacing all the way through, especially after the death of his brother. He looked like an angel of death driven by pure rage and vengeance. Just look at that! Nothing left in the world but the drive to kill John McClane. The only thing I never really understood in this movie, which you can probably pick up on by the way I've been talking about it, is Argyle being in the garage all the way throughout this movie. I mean, the movie actually had to cut to him just sitting in the garage listening to the radio several times just to remind us he was there. And what did it amount to? He stopped that guy from escaping. You can't really say he stopped the rest of them because they would never have made it down there anyway. John intercepted them before they got a chance. It just never felt like it was worth all the reminders he was down there. So to sum up, I love this movie. It is the best of the Die Hard series. But more importantly, does making fists with your toes really work? I don't know, but you have been watching Good or Bad, and Christmas is almost here. See you next time.
Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
Yippee Ki Yay, motherfucker.